What's going on? I hope you're having a great day today. The settings I'm going to go over with you today are going to change the way the game plays for you, but in a good way. And if you stick around to the end, we do have one bonus setting that I haven't seen anybody go over yet, and I'm going to show you where that's at. So the first thing you want to start off with, in my opinion, is I would go right to your brightness, and I would change it from what they recommended down to 0 for the first setting, 12 for the second one, which is much lower than what they recommend, but trust me. And then I kind of have this just below the threshold of what they recommend. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that it's not so washed out on the screen for you, and that the colors are kind of, the shadows, everything's a little bit more immersive. And I haven't come across an area that's dark enough that this has caused an issue for me. So that's definitely worth changing right in the beginning. And then I would go over and I would turn off your motion blur. It's on by default. Turning this off can reduce motion sickness is what they say on there, but on top of that, you spent an hour in the character creator. You probably want to have your character be as crisp and clear as possible. After that, I would go over to your camera settings, and inside of your camera settings, I would start on page 1. That's going to have all of your like sensitivities and things like that. That's change at your discretion kind of stuff. On page 2, it continues into more sensitivities, dead zones, and things like that. But on the bottom part of the screen, you start running into important ones. So camera zoom by default is way down on 4. I would bump it up to 10. Your camera pan, that's a discretionary thing. 1 is where it starts. It's got you in the center. I like to offset my character a little bit, so I put it on 5. Gives me a little bit more view on the screen. If the big monster's there, I can kind of see and control things a little bit easier. And then by default, your camera shake and your ambient sway are up on 5. That's a lot going on. I would just lower them a little bit, and then I would disable your focus camera. And the focus camera disabled, I'm going to show you what that does. Is if you go over here on this monster, and I lock this Doshigama on my camera. Maybe. Right there. So now if I hit L1, I'm locked on that monster, right? It shows me the monster, it lets me look at him. That's awesome. But it doesn't hold me onto that monster. If you have focus camera enabled, it's going to lock you onto that monster, and it's going to hold you on that monster like it's Dark Souls, which you might think is a good thing. But you just seen right there was 2 monsters fighting. If there's another monster coming in from behind you, you're not going to know it. You're just going to get clipped by that monster attacking, and it's going to lead to you getting extra damage that you don't need to take. So I would just disable that and be done with it. The other thing is your reticle direction. I changed that so that the reticle aims in the direction and angle of my camera, not my hunter's orientation. We're going to run away from this Doshigama because he's being a goon. He's being a gooner for sure, so we're just going to sprint away from him. While we're sprinting away from him, I'm going to give you a hint onto the other setting that we're going to change. The other setting has to do with when you're on hunts. I don't know if you fire SOSs, if you've noticed that bots will come into your lobby. I'm going to show you where you can go to change that. Because I don't think everybody wants bots. I'm hoping that this guy's going to stop hunting right here. If I pop this off, pop a ghillie on, that should take care of it. So then we continue on, and you have your aim assist. You can set that up to enable, disabled. That's up to you. Camera reset direction. I have that set up into the direction my hunter's facing. So that way I can kind of be like, all right, that's the center. That's where I'm going. And then that should be all for your camera settings. I would go to your game settings. First page mostly is about your HUD. I change everything to small so that I can see more of the monsters, more of the map, more of everything. I just like to see a lot. I've seen a lot of people saying that they like to turn off the mini-map rotation. I would actually recommend against that. And the reason I would recommend against that is not so much the rotation, but the maps are very vertical. And I don't know if you noticed that, but right here, I can't tell how you get up on that right there. But if I look over on my camera and the camera rotates, I can see like, oh, okay, so there's a way to climb up right here. I just have to have a sacred to do it. Oh, I guess I don't even need to have a sacred to do it. So like, that's why I wouldn't recommend changing that. And then I would also set it up so that your angle is aligned with camera. So that way, if you're trying to find something like this mining node, you can look up and you can angle it and you can tell exactly where it is. You can tell that that wiggly litchy is down below the mining node on the other side of this wall. So I wouldn't necessarily change those off unless you really don't care about it. But I think having it rotated with how much verticality is in the maps is actually a very good thing. Health gauges and all that other stuff, that's up to you guys if you want to change it. But on page 3, you run into some important stuff. You can change it so that your weapon doesn't show up while you're in cutscenes. You can change it so your head armor doesn't show up while you're in cutscenes, and you can actually change it so your head armor doesn't show up at all. Hunter visibility is when you're behind a monster, it'll outline your silhouette in a different color. It's a discretionary thing, but I picked the yellow because it stands out a little bit more. You can hide other players' secrets. That might improve your playability a little bit and keep the game running at a high frame rate for you. Doesn't really change a lot, but the auto explore I would definitely turn off. What that does is when you call your secret, if you have auto explore off, he's not just going to randomly run places, he's randomly running to that Doshiguma right now because I have it pinned, so I'm going to unpin it. But he just kind of, if you have auto explore on, he just runs his map. You can end up fighting in things that you don't want to do, but you can still pin things that you want him to bring you to. Like if I wanted him to bring me to this node, I can pin this node, and he still goes there. So I would just turn that off. It's on by default, and it doesn't help out in any way that I can tell. You will see that your bot hunters, these are the support hunters, you can come in here and disable all their abilities to do extra stuff, but later in the video I'm going to show you where you can actually make it so they don't show up at all. And then this display with coefficient on the weapons, all this is going to do is display with coefficient means that a bigger weapon is going to show a bigger number. Display without coefficient is going to more or less change those numbers into a DPS based number, which is going to be great for you. It's going to show you, like, that's not going to make the dual blades seem super weak next to a greatsword because the greatsword's hitting for 700 and the dual blades are hitting for 140. So it's going to even those numbers out a little bit for you. Then we can go into our controls. First thing I would do is I would change my button configurations to type 2 or type 3. And what this is doing is it's putting your radial menus when you hold your L1 button or your bumper button so that you can change between your menus using your square triangle OX or your YBAX buttons, which means that you can control your character while you're cycling through your radial menus, and you can kite around a monster while you're using a potion. It's way more convenient on type 2 or 3. Hold button duration, I just changed that to short. That's all your skip menu buttons, or how long you have to hold circle to summon your sacred if you engage that setting, how long you have to hold a button to sheath your weapon. We're talking about sheathing. Disable auto sheath, I would just turn that off right away. If, say, somebody's dropping a bunch of barrel bombs and you're waiting for them, you don't want your weapon to just go away because you're standing still. Directional controls, that's all up to you. Item bar controls, that's all up to you. But the item use and the slinger auto load, I turn the slinger auto load off so that I can prep my next pods instead of automatically putting on what I tab over to. And then the item use controls, I changed to the second type, which is you have to push your thumbstick in to use them, as opposed to just aiming in a direction and releasing. And that's because if you put a lot of stuff on your radial menus, it's very hard to be that precise with a radial menu. After that, I would go over here and I would change your focus mode to toggle on both. I would just do it and get used to it. There's a lot of buttons that you have to hit at every weapon you use. So you don't want another button added into that mix that you have to hold on to and try to figure out. Sacred controls, I changed that. Oh, I still have the rock pin. That's why my sacred's running towards it. I'm like, why is this guy running like crazy? Sacred controls, I have those on 1. Sacred control radial movement, I have that on manual movement. That just means when I call him with the radial menu, he's not just going to run like crazy. And then sacred manual controls, I have it set up to type 2, which is this left thumbstick. It's the same way you control your character. So it makes it so that you can run around. He's going to run back to this rock, but so it makes it so you can control your sacred a little bit easier, and you can still hold the R1 button to increase his speed and stuff like you would normally. Outside of that, that's pretty much all those other settings. The only other thing that I would change inside of the game, and I'm going to try to find it for you if I can. I think it's inside the game settings. Maybe. I don't know where it went. But you can change it so that you're... Oh, it's probably in audio. I'm a little bit crazy. Yeah, so right here in audio, you can change it so that your cat doesn't talk. I don't know why. It's super jarring to hear my cat talk, so I turned it off. He's a cat. He should meow. And now for the bonus setting that I was going to show you guys. If we open up our map and we go back to the base camp, which is right over here, I'm going to show you where you can go in and you can turn off the bots so that if you fire a SOS flare, it doesn't just launch bots into your lobby, which again, if you want that, you can, but there's a way to change it. So you go to the quest, and on the very top, you have the settings. You can change your max party members. You can set it up so that I have it set it up so that only players come. You can have it so players and support hunters come, or only support hunters if you don't want to do that online interaction. And you can also set it up so that your SOS automatically fires every quest you accept. That way, if you really like the online, like I like the online fighting with everyone, I like when the monsters get stronger. So I have my SOS flare on all the time. But that's what we have for tips for you guys for the settings. If you found this video helpful, leave a like, subscribe, and come back and watch another video.